Welcome to Duluth Conservative episode number 18. How's it going, Dave?
Wow, we're at 18 already.
We're at 18 and we're still no better off prepared than we were the first. Actually, we're probably worse off than we were on the first show.
Yeah, and the clocks for this are way off again too. So don't mind me. So
well, your machine is from the dark ages. I think it's coal powered, so should last throughout the show, hopefully.
Well, it says we've been alive for 5.5 hours. So
I've been alive longer than that.
Yeah, who knows? We'll take whatever it gives us.
That's right. All right, let's jump into it. For people who haven't seen the show before, this is going to be news that has to do with Duluth, Minnesota, and then Minnesota news, national news, international news, a new segment. And then we're going to talk about health and fitness at the very end. So we're going to jump into it, try to make it as interesting as possible, maybe do some news people haven't heard about. And if there is stuff that people have heard about that we're not covering, please let us know. We welcome comments, feedback, and suggestions. Are you ready, Dave?
And like and subscribes too. We like those too.
Like and subscribe. Very good. Yeah, this is why you're on the show, because you're smarter, better looking, and younger than me.
Hair's grayer.
Yeah, well. Let's go into it. So Duluth news for this week. This is May 22nd right now. I wanted to start out with some good news. Good news to me. I don't know if it's good news to everybody. The Northern Lights Express funding is being slashed. So of the $200 million that the state of Minnesota has pledged to this rail system that goes between Minneapolis and Duluth, Minnesota, they're taking $77 million out of it to fund one of their other social packages that they have, which is a horrible idea, but it's going to be a continuous money suck, which is the unemployment insurance for people that work part-time at schools and used to get the summer off and have to find their own jobs during the summer. Now they're just getting unemployment for the summer.
Yeah.
And this is just the beginning. And I saw that one of the congressmen that took this out said, well, it should be plenty. If the federal government kicks in the funding for it, this will still be plenty. So I don't know why we ponied up $200 million if we didn't need $77 million of it.
Right.
What's the justification if this is going to be good enough?
Yeah, and because just like the new mansion that they're building for our legislatures, that the state was supposed to pony up $300 million. It just blew into $500 million. Like the blue line down public transportation down in the cities, that went from $1.2 billion to $2.5 billion. So we can take money away from this because obviously costs are going to come in lower than expected.
Yeah, right. Time. So let's see. Representative John Kosnick declared the project effectively dead, criticizing it as wasteful and declining rail ridership. Well, I think that kind of falls into the NorthStar line. So the NorthStar line is a light rail system that goes from Minneapolis to north to other suburbs. And Minnesota lawmakers and state agencies are exploring redirecting funds from the NorthStar commuter rail line. Specifically, there's a push to replace the NorthStar with a bus service and repurpose the funds for other transportation project needs. Now, the reason I'm putting this on here is because it's related to what we've talked about several times about different funding projects. California's light rail is a great example of that, where they have spent countless hundreds of billions of dollars. It was supposed to be finished 5 years ago. It hasn't even, from my understanding, none of the track has been laid yet for it. And it's billions of dollars over cost. But I read this cost savings is the cost to operate the NorthStar line in 2023 was approximately $11.6 million. So $11.6 million to operate it. And they collected $323,000 in fares. $350,000 for an $11 million system, where buses, the infrastructure is there already, right? We have roads, we have the buses. The rails are great. And I get static from people about this, where it's like, you don't care about this. Why don't you like these rail systems? I like them just fine. I don't want to pay for them.
Right.
When I talk about the DTA buses in Duluth, I talk about how empty they are all the time and how maybe we should look at scaling back. And somebody asked me, well, why don't you like the buses? Why are you going to get rid of them? You know, people rely on those. I am in no way trying to get rid of the buses. What I'm trying to do is make it so they don't cost us so much money. And if
Right.
they can't make money, at least break even or get close, we have to rethink this system. We have to come up with a better way to do this that isn't costing us so much money just to have the convenience of the buses.
Right. Correct. Yeah. As the population growth changes and moves, you can, one conversation to the bus driver and you've changed the bus route to be more effective to the people that need it.
Right.
So
you have smaller buses too.
Correct. And it's just a perfect way to just handle the system, the buses, not the rails.
Right.
Every time you need to change a rail, that's $1 billion. And,
Oh. Yeah. So, if somebody's listening to this and they think, you're conservative and you don't care about people and why are you so uncaring? It's not that I don't care about it. I don't want you taking money from people to play your social games. If I am wanting to help somebody, I want to do it on my own terms, meaning I get my money and I decide where it goes. And I decide the best people that I think should have it and where I want to direct it, as opposed to you taking my money and then directing it to things I absolutely morally am against. And that counts for everybody. Things I'm morally against aren't the same as you, but things you're morally against may be things I want to support, but I shouldn't make you pay for the things that you don't morally like.
Right. And why and we're talking about wasting money.
Right.
So every, it's $11.3 million a year we're wasting just to have that, just so somebody can say, yeah, the train can go from here to there.
Yeah. And you got to look at these things as being, if they're not massive money laundering schemes, I don't know how you do it any differently if you wanted to do it. I mean, how many projects can be several $billion over budget without producing what they're supposed to and nobody being held accountable for it before you look at it and go, of course they want to have these things. As soon as they get that contract, man, that's just money in the bank for them.
And that's why, there's a lot of argument against privatizing certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could make money at it, someone would be doing it.
Right, exactly. And some of the things I don't think should be privatized are like energy, electricity and water and sewage. That stuff makes sense to me. But transportation really doesn't make sense. The states and the country is involved with that at all. It's nice we have the Amtrak line. Can it make money? Hopefully. I certainly don't want to go much lower than busting even on it, though.
But like you said, if Amtrak thought it was Duluth to Minneapolis daily was profitable, they'd already be doing it.
Exactly. They would like to get the government to help, but yeah. You do it yourself. The train track's already there. It shouldn't be a problem. So yeah, they should be doing it themselves. If they thought there was money in it, they'd do it themselves.
So we're just going to look, if you complain about property taxes being too high, you complain about the schools not being funded properly, homeless, blah, blah, blah. This is what we're trying to fix.
Right. Oh, and that's a great point too, because the same people that lament about how housing isn't affordable are ones that increase your taxes so high that you can't live in a house.
Right.
My own property taxes are $900 a month. That was almost that was more than the first place I rented for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's just to live there. So when I retire, I never get to pay that. Even if I pay off the house, $900 a month now, 10 years from now, how much is it going to be? God knows. Well, unless I get my way. And then
we get you elected and we'll fix these problems.
We'll get to my bills. We'll talk about it in my bills, right? All right. I'm going to go on to another piece of good news. Am I going to say Roger's name wrong again? Roger Reinert has committed to cleaning up downtown, and he views graffiti as one of the big problems or one of the big symptoms of a problem downtown, which I can't disagree with. It's not the biggest problem we have. We have people on the street here throwing up as I walk down the street today. So we've got other problems with people, but
Right.
graffiti is a problem. And I think when you start solving some of the people problems you have down here, you start solving some of the graffiti problems you have down here.
Yeah, turn graffiti into a felony. Give them jail time.
Well, they took the first steps on that. At least they can charge them with a misdemeanor. They never used to be able to charge them up until like a few months ago.
Okay.
You put graffiti on the wall, it wasn't even a crime. So Katie Hagland is the executive director of the Union Gospel Mission, and she said she recognizes Ramsey's concerns, but also noted that St. Louis County has seen a 41% increase in homelessness over the past decade and 150% increase in chronic homelessness. I was looking at those numbers going, now, are those people that have lived here that are now homeless, or those people migrating to this area
Right.
because this is the place where they can get the milk and honey? They don't migrate to the places that don't take care of them. So that's not asked for in the Duluth News Tribune. They don't ask those kind of questions. They just report on what they say.
Right.
Probably because I don't know how many reporters they have on staff, but and then Hugland also said, we need to increase our services to support the people who are already here. Last year alone, more than 1,100 people used our warming center, and we had 1 in 9 children going to bed hungry each night. I don't understand that. 1 in 9 children of what? What of 9 children where? In the homeless shelter? In the city itself?
Right.
Is it the city itself? Are you saying that more than 10% of the population of kids in this city go to bed hungry? I'd like to see the stats that back that up. But again, reading the article, you don't get that kind of information.
Right. And they get fed for free at school. So if the kids are in school, they're
True. Yeah.
They're eating for free. So that
Right.
the whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. But at least the good news was the downtown cleanup is on people's radars. We do need to do that. If people are going to come and live downtown, or they actually are serious about having a vibrant downtown, you can't just let the people that are lounging around down here, laying on the street. I walked past a guy that was basically passed out on the street today. You got to clean that up. Until you do, people aren't going to feel safe. They're not going to bring their families down there. They're not going to go on dates down here. So good job, Reinhardt. Again, I'm giving him a thumbs up. I'm liking what I'm hearing. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. We'll see what his actions are. But yeah, at least he's going in the right direction, because you can't, like Minneapolis and St. Paul, you don't even want to go down there in the daylight. So
no. When I moved down there back in 1990, I felt safe on the streets in Minneapolis and during the day and at dark.
Yeah.
At night. No problems. And then it started getting sketchy at night. And then it started getting sketchy in the day. And it was intolerable at night. So we don't want Duluth to become a Minneapolis.
Yeah, now it's ghost town. Both of them.
In Minneapolis, yeah.
Yeah, Minneapolis, St. Paul, they're both ghost towns. So
yeah. On the best nights, on the worst nights, there's a stabbing victim laying on the street, which is what happened right outside the place I worked during the day.
Yeah.
This kind of falls into international news, but it also falls into Duluth news. We've got ourselves some Venezuelan gang members in Duluth knocking over ATMs. So these guys are from Venezuela. They are in the gangs, and they're in Duluth, Minnesota. So don't say that the policies that are taking place for the border don't affect us here in the Northland. This is just the start. These guys are here knocking over ATMs, but Duluth is a fairly sheltered little community, and people feel fairly safe here. That's where gangs go to run amok. So be careful about that. The police got them. They got them in custody. Hopefully they're getting deported back to their home country. But yeah, it's great to see, huh?
Yeah, that's another reason to not have affordable transportation to get into your city.
Right.
Crime in Minneapolis went up as soon as they introduced the very cheap Chicago to downtown Minneapolis trail system or train
Yeah, well,
system.
I've told you that when I used to work downtown Minneapolis, as soon as it got to be nice weather, Detroit and Chicago hats were on everybody's heads that were down there.
Right.
So that you can't tell me they weren't coming from those cities, because that's the sports teams they were following, and nobody follows Detroit in Minnesota. You barely find people in Michigan that follow the Lions.
Yeah.
So one of the suspects is from Chicago. I don't know what that means. I think he's from Venezuela, but he originated in Chicago from the United States. And according to the court records, the suspects are in the process of being deported.
Perfect.
Good. And that's where they should go.
And hopefully we don't have a federal judge stopping Trump from doing that.
Right. I would just want to point out this one thing that you added. I thought this was pretty funny that we have this in Minnesota or in Duluth.
Especially Duluth, yeah.
But I'm just going to go down, and I got to get to it again because I can't remember this.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember her name either.
Bettina Keepers, so Bettina Keppers, so it could be Keppers or Keepers, has been confirmed to the Duluth. You get ready. Duluth non-binary, queer, trans, two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersection, asexual commission. So what is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Why? Just why?
Why do we have a commission specializing in less than 1% of a community?
Right. And if you're going to name it, why don't you just say it what it isn't? Because you've covered just about everything.
Right.
The non-straight commission. Just call it that. The anti-straight commission. Or they're not anti-straight, but they're focused on everything else but straight people, right? That's all it is.
Basically, yeah. And so why are we spending the time and the money on something that's discriminatory? That we're only concerned about one group.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense to be specifying what this group doesn't need special attention. If they do, start a club.
Right. And we've been talking about this since episode 1 is, Duluth is not being represented. Duluth is representing the 1%.
Right.
The small, so the Duluth News Tribune representative out in the East End, she represents a group like this, not everybody. Yeah.
Right.
And we have to get back to representing everybody.
Right. So the little, to shorten it up though, you don't have to call this group, this commission, everything. Just call it the NQT2SLGBIA commission.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah, that'll change next week.
Yeah. What else are they going to add?
Yeah. What else? Yeah. Whatever they're going to add. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to move on from Duluth news unless you have anything else.
No, I went through the city council notes and what's coming up on Tuesday, because Monday's a holiday, is just a lot of busy work and approving things and saying yes to everybody. So
when it comes to money.
When it comes to money, yeah, we're just going to spend money. So
right.
Typical them.
I do want to do a precursor, a preview though. We are going to have the tall ships coming into Duluth in July. I think it's July 5th. I'm not sure. So I can't wait to see them. I haven't been around for them the last couple times, so this will be great.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was I was thinking the 12th, but I could be off on that too.
I'm not sure the day. It's July. It's early July sometime.
It's in July. That's the only thing we'll pin down right now.
Yeah. Don't hold us to that.
And we don't know for sure if the ship is going to run into a bridge just like in
oh God.
New York or wherever it was.
That was just what a shambles that was. Oh my God.
And then
I'm looking forward to finding out what happened there.
And then to have Schumer blame Trump for it. I didn't listen to the argument of how he connected two things that have nothing to do with each other, but
Schumer, if he drops his coffee, he'll blame Trump on it. I mean, that's just his go-to default.
Yeah.
Minnesota Legislature, Minnesota bills. I don't have a lot to say here. They've been, they wrapped up the session a couple days ago, and now I think they've called a special session. If they haven't, they're going to, I believe, because they only got through a few things. One of the things I want to point out that they blocked was the establishment of an independent officer of the Inspector General to combat fraud. And you know who didn't vote for it? Every single Democrat, because they don't like people looking into fraud. It cuts into their bottom line, I believe.
That's about the only reason I could see doing it.
So I want you to know, if you're watching this, Pete Johnson from the west end of Duluth and Alicia Kozlowski from the east end of Duluth, both endorsed by the Duluth News Tribune, voted against a bill that would create an independent counsel to study fraud. You make that of it what you will, but that is the hard, that is the hard truth. Is
right.
They voted against it, along with every other Democrat. So if you can tell me how you can justify that, I would be interested to find that out.
Yeah, and even what Walz said when he was running for vice president was when he came back, he said he was going to work on fraud, and that's one of his top priorities. And that's his priority, not the Democrats, obviously.
No, they don't. I mean, they were there when they were in charge of the trifecta when all the fraud, a massive amount of fraud occurred in the state.
Right.
They have no reason to cover it up. They might get caught, I believe. I mean, their priorities are so odd to me. And I would love to have a conversation with somebody to describe their priorities, where their priorities seem to be complaining about the federal government, protecting illegal immigrants from outside this country, and not preventing fraud. That seems to be their main points. Why is that?
Right. And then why are they so curious about why they lose in elections?
Well, even better, why is it that people support them?
Right.
So for Alicia Kozlowski, I've said this before. She says exactly what she's going to do. It's not like she's putting up this fraud. She's not like these guys that, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and they get elected and they don't do any of it. And they turn around. She's telling everybody plainly what she's going to do, and she's doing it. Why are you supporting it as a voter? What are you getting out of this? And why are you turning on all the other citizens in this state just so you can support things that don't matter to 98% of us, which is what the government is supposed to be looking out for?
Correct.
Let me go through some of the things that did and didn't get done. So DWI reform went through. So now it's tougher laws on people to get DWIs. They closed the Stillwater prison, one of our biggest prisons, I guess. It said it was 111-year-old Stillwater prison has been beset with safety problems and has no air conditioning, Dave.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
For the 4 days a year that it gets hot?
Well, wait. I'm sorry. Isn't air conditioning bad for the environment? Isn't that an environmental concern?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I'd want to get rid of it for the household, so why would we put it in a prison?
Exactly. Cutting funding for the NLX train, we talked about, $77 million. School unemployment insurance. Republicans tried to unsuccessfully roll that back, but of course the Democrats, they love them some free money. So
yep.
They made the teachers, their pensions a lot sweeter, allowing them to retire early with less penalties. Because Dave, I've heard that's the hardest job in the world.
Yep.
Some of the things that didn't get done, sports betting. Oh no, Dave, we can't do sports betting anymore. Although we can do it online or at the casinos or at the racetrack.
Yeah, and 78% of Minnesotans wanted sports betting, so we better not do that.
Yeah. I'm in the 22% that doesn't give a crap about it.
Yeah, and then 73% of Minnesotans didn't like the new flag, but we still got the new. They jammed that through on ours.
That was a priority, Dave. They had to get that through. That was so important.
Exactly.
The Office of Inspector General I talked about didn't get that passed because the Democrats all voted against it. They didn't get the social media company tax increase. So the Democrats' proposal to impose the first in the nation tax on social media giants didn't make it far. The proposal would have charged social media companies with more than 1 million Minnesotan users $165,000 plus 50 cents per month per user over 1 million users. Why? Why should these companies have to pay that?
Because they're all just doing they're all billionaires and they've got plenty of money. I seen a DFL representative and all she was saying, she said it like 5 times in a row, and I forgot to grab the video, is tax the rich. Just tax the rich. That'll fix it. Just tax the rich.
That was,
tax the rich.
I would believe that is I think it was Jen Schultz.
Oh, really? Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and the little bit I saw was all she said, and I believe it was her. It said, the answer is tax the rich.
Yeah.
But they didn't put the question. The question is, how do you get the wealthy people to leave this state in the most quick way possible? That's how you do it. How do you lose in wealth from this state? That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Because this isn't the only state in the union. So if you're going to tax the rich here, they're going to leave.
Yeah, so going after social media companies, they have the money, therefore you tax them. And that's all they see is, why do other companies have our money?
Yes. We've already lost a vast amount of wealth in this state because they're fleeing this state because of the taxes that are being levied on them. And you can't blame them.
Yeah, Medtronic, they were, past tense, the #1 taxpayer in Minnesota. They moved their headquarters out of Minnesota to Ireland because the taxes were just getting too outrageous.
Right.
There's still a lot of employees from Medtronic, but those will slowly fade out over time.
Right. Let's see. Let me go on to some other things that didn't pass. A nuclear moratorium repeal. So nuclear power is, as far as I understand, fairly clean now. It's a lot better than it was 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. What people our age remember as being nuclear power, which is 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, yeah, which are bad deals. And even like in Japan when they had that tsunami, there's some bad things to it, but also it's a very clean energy too. And it can power a lot with very little footprint. So Republicans are trying to pass that because like I was talking about, we need redundant and abundant supplies of energy. So it can't just be coal. It can't just be petrol. It can't just be solar. It can't just be wind. Let's get them all going in it and see if we can get as many lines in as possible so that we have, it just reduces, it helps our security. It reduces the problems that we have with losing one set of power and then being really, really, we lose coal, let's say. Just say all of a sudden coal just can't be used. And that's what we rely on. We're stuck. So we got to have many different ways of having power and many different types of power too. Electricity can't be our only one.
No.
I mean,
we'll get that into later in the show too.
Yeah. What was that country that, was it Spain or Italy that just was like, yeah, we're all completely, Spain, renewable energy. And then boom, they were gone. All the energy was gone in one fell swoop.
Yep.
Funding for stadiums. Minnesota lawmakers didn't want to provide funding for professional sports stadiums, including, I didn't know about this, a $395 million request from the Xcel Energy Center and officials in St. Paul. They later cut the request to $50 million. The Minnesota Vikings requested funds from electronic pull tab gaming to help keep the U.S. Bank Stadium. The Twins sought the extension of a sales tax to maintain Target Field. It's not good enough that we build these things for them, but we have to maintain them too. This is the huge downfall of having professional sports teams in your state. They're just a money suck. Now, they generate a lot of money, but they take a lot of money from us, the citizens. They generate money for them.
And why isn't the maintenance of these buildings figured into the cost of a ticket?
Exactly.
You know, why are the unemployed people in Minnesota paying taxes to help out the billionaires have a better life?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? $50 million they asked for? How much are they paying the quarterback for the Vikings this next year?
Yeah.
I mean, my God, if you look at all the millions of dollars these sports players get, why are they coming to us for money? You know, maybe they should figure that in when they're coming up with their salary negotiations. We can't afford it because we have to pay for a stadium. That makes sense to me.
Right.
Let's see. Unemployment for the Iron Range. Minnesota House members voted unanimously to extend unemployment insurance for steel workers laid off from the Minnesota Iron Range for additional 26 weeks. They brought the proposal up as a standalone bill, and it was not going to pass. So the Senate didn't act on the legislation.
Yeah, basically we're back to the Democrats wanting to help the illegals, but they won't help the Minnesota Iron Range people.
Right. I honestly don't understand why they need the extension. It's a job, and I understand it sucks for it to go away, but everybody else has to play by that rule. I mean, I don't understand the special concessions for the union workers that are up there.
Yeah, and I thought I've never been in a union, so I don't know the specifics, but I thought that's what the union was part of, is to pay them if they get laid off.
Well, in a strike situation, yes, but the state of Minnesota pays their unemployment. It always has. The unions don't do that.
So these guys will get 26 weeks like normal people, but now they wanted to extend it another 26 weeks. And
exactly. Yeah. And
that was awful, I guess. So
I get the fact that it's a bad deal to lose your job like that. It's a bad deal for everybody. So I don't understand why we're coming up with special circumstances for different people. They did kick off. Well, I don't think this passed. Did the budget pass?
Well, no, because they came to an agreement. Walz in the House and the Senate came to an agreement, but there were still 8 out of the 10 subcommittees that had to finalize things. That's why they're going into a special session to finalize the details of these committees, like Health and Human Services and Transportation. And if they can get those dialed in this week, we could have one by Friday night. Otherwise, who knows when it's going to end.
Well, and the thing is, the Democrats, again, and I don't mean to pick on them, but their thinking I can't get it. They're sticking to this fight of keeping illegal immigrants on our Minnesota healthcare system.
Right.
And I would like to have somebody explain to me why I should be working during the day for somebody else from another country to have healthcare here, when I also have to pay for my own healthcare, which is thousands of dollars a year, and a copay when I go in.
Yeah.
And anybody else that has to go into work. When you're going into work, are you just skipping happy because you get to work for somebody else? Not of your own free will. I mean, I give money away to people, and that means I work during the day and I give it to other people, but that's my choice. I certainly don't choose to have people coming in from another country illegally and then me supporting them with health care when other people I know don't get that same kind of health care. It's crazy.
Right.
And Alicia Kozlowski is one of those ones standing up front saying, you can't take this away. It's inhumane. So, let's see. Bonding package didn't go through. There's some stuff to come up with. So We're going to do a recap at the end of this after the session is actually over, and we're going to talk about the bills that Pete Johnson and Alicia Kozlowski got passed and which ones didn't. And so that'll be coming up in a couple episodes after we get this through. And I'm trying to finagle some Minnesota legislators to come on to the show and kind of give us a recap and give us the real background of what happened. So hopefully we'll get that coming up soon. All right. Anything else with the Minnesota legislature?
No, that pretty much covers their incompetence. I mean,
It does not cover their incompetence. It just is a brief taste.
So then a special, so you don't show, the Democrats don't show up for the first 26 days and they get paid. And now they push back after the fact and they're going to get paid extra for not showing up the first 23 days.
Right.
So,
and on top of that, they had time to push through bills that sent a strongly worded letter to Donald Trump saying, you can't do what you're doing, even though we have nothing to say about it.
Right.
They spent time on that. And that's where they waste their time. There should be no special session. This is another cost to us. And it's ridiculous that they can't get their job done in time. Yeah. Every year it's like this too, right up to the end.
Yeah, right. Definitely.
We'll go to Minnesota news. We talked about this a little bit already. The Minnesota lawmakers strike budget deal, but protests erupt on ending health care for undocumented adults. One thing to point out about this bill too was they're still funding it for illegal immigrant children. It's just the adults that were getting kicked off at the end of the year. So they're still getting another 7 months of health care, which they're going to cram in as much as possible.
Right.
So it isn't a great deal, really. I mean, you get rid of the illegal aliens, though, when they get deported, they have a choice to bring their kids with them, which you hope to God they do because they're good parents.
Yeah.
That gets them off of our problem, which is good.
Well, Walz and the Senate agreed with the House. So, the original bill to reduce the budget for Minnesota a record number for the next 2 years. So the only way to do that is to kick people, stop the fraud and abuse. Well, that's having illegals on is basically fraud.
Right.
Definitely abuse.
And the thing is, they should never have been on there in the first place.
Right.
So we talked about this last week. I think one of the guys I was talking to is like, Doge doing all this stuff. Yeah, it's eliminating waste, but I hate to see people lose their job. They shouldn't have had that job in the first place.
Correct.
So you've created a problem and then you can't muster up enough to get rid of the problem because now that would be too bad. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Let's see. I have this listed under Walz wants to give criminals time to escape. So it's been a while since I reviewed this. So I'm going to have to take a look at it here. So we've got an X or a Twitter feed. Let me just play this. This is our Mr. Walz. Uh-oh, hang on. Please hold while I get this in the right window. Just talk amongst yourselves. We're gonna play a little clip of Tim Walz at it looks like a graduation ceremony where he's wearing the funny hat. So he's probably got a doctorate in education, right?
Well, they make all at the main university. They make everyone who speaks wear one of those cap and gowns. So I don't know why he's wearing anything,
Well, thank God he's wearing something.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense. Not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye. Just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into those vans, and disappeared. Donald.
So you can't get much more reactionary than that.
Yeah.
He wants pure emotion. He wants you to, hear that Gestapo snatching people up off the streets in unmarked vans. Well, that's not what they're doing. You know what they're doing? They're taking illegal immigrants and getting them out of our country, which they shouldn't be in the first place.
They're arresting criminals.
Yes, they are. Yeah. And there's no, when you arrest somebody, you don't let them go back to their house and say, well, gather all your stuff and say goodbye and maybe escape. No, they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is get these guys off the street. And that's why a guy like Tim Walz doesn't understand, because he's never had to do it. He's never had to face any consequences of having this be a problem. He's been a protester his whole life. He's worked in education, and he just doesn't care about you and me. He cares about his position. He wants to run for president again. So anything he does is based on that.
Well, I was wondering why he was even discussing stuff like that at a commencement address. He should have been talking about the future for these. It happened to be at the University of Minnesota Law Center, so he was talking to law students. So it has, he should have been talking about the future, or their futures, not the president.
Right.
But he's kind of right now he's a one-trick pony. He only has one thing on his mind, and that's the next election. So.
Right. All right. Let's see. I'm going to skip that Omar one. I saw the same thing that you put in there, but I'm not going to talk about it. But we will go on to, I'm sorry, I got to find my stuff again. This is what happens when I go around. We're going to hit on national news. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. President Trump's one big, beautiful bill has passed, apparently.
Yeah.
This is a major win for Speaker Johnson. He got something passed. My God, I can't believe it. They actually got something done. I don't really know much about this bill, and I need to find out more about it. I worry about bills that are so big that you maybe can't read them, and I don't want to do a Nancy Pelosi. You gotta sign it before you know what's in it. You got to enact it. But this was big for Speaker Johnson to get through, and it went through a couple of times before it got done.
Yeah, they did make some adjustments for people who were voting against it to get them to vote for it. So, and that's all I heard on that. I didn't find out the details. So as soon as it passes, or give it a week or so, and then we'll find out after he signs it what's actually in it.
Right. A couple of things I do know that are in it we'll talk about is no tax for tips or overtime, and that goes up to $25,000, my understanding. There's $175 billion allocated for deportations and for the border wall, and there is some tax relief for seniors. So.
Well, he said there's going to be no tax on Social Security, so hopefully that's in there.
Yeah, and that's just a very high level. I'm sure there's lots of stuff in it, some good, and some probably going to come out and be like, oh God, what are you doing?
Right.
Just like every one of these massive bills. Let's see. We've got Joe Biden announcing that he has prostate cancer. And it's to the bone. It's stage 4. The same day, Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, announced the same thing. And from what I understand, from what I've heard from doctors, which not all doctors know everything, and there's obviously some different circumstances, that it's almost medically impossible that you would not find stage 4 to the bone prostate cancer when he didn't have it in his physical last time. He must have had it for years. And This is one of the easiest to identify cancers there is. Now, I'm not a doctor. I do not pretend I know anything about this. And I'm sure that there are circumstances where it can be very fast onset. But to the bone, I think that just takes a long time, doesn't it? Typically?
Everything I heard is it's a very long time, basically 10 years, give or take, on the individual. So they're talking, they knew about it before he was even elected. And they were talking about the side effects of the drugs, which explains a lot of things that he was doing while, he was forgetfulness and for, falling, losing your balance, dizziness. And it would explain, the last 2 years of his presidency.
Yeah, I saw the same thing too. Somebody was detailing that the medication does cause all those symptoms, and confusion was the big one.
Yeah.
But what was the plan then? And every year they do a physical on the president. And they come out with the results, right? Is this what happens to the physician if he was covering this up? I mean, there's something that should have to happen to him. This is outright lying to the American public about the health and fitness of the president. They got away with this before, back when like FDR was in office and everything, but that was then. It's different now. It shouldn't be happening anymore.
Right. And everybody, most people know, even though I'm not a doctor either, it's a very slow progressing, curable cancer. So they could have told us 10 years ago, hey, he's got this problem, but we're going to fix it.
The interesting thing that comes out of this, though, is Scott Adams having it as well. And he didn't say how long he's known about it, but he was saying this can happen very quickly. So I've got a counterpoint to somebody who actually has the same cancer saying, maybe it is something that's popped up. It's possible. But everything points to it not being like that. But, hopefully this gets sorted out. And if it was something that was there and he was getting treated for, then there needs to have some accountability.
Correct.
I'm going to share this. People have been talking now. It's been a topic du jour to talk about how Biden's mental state was declining and how some people hid it and some people were trying to expose it. Jim Jordan says we shouldn't be surprised they lied about Biden's mental state. Jim has been around for years. And Jim, I used to listen to what he had to say, and I loved the way he talked, what he was saying. The problem with Jim is I've never seen him actually do anything. And, when you talk about how somebody should have uncovered this, it was clear to us, Dave. We had talked about this when he was on the campaign trail in 2019 about how he had dementia, because I had been working with dementia patients, not directly with dementia patients, but I've been working with systems that had to do with dementia because that was in my master's degree. And I was telling you about the stage of dementia I thought Joe Biden was in, and you could see clear signs of problems with his cognitive abilities. Jim was in office this whole time. Again, this is another example of him coming out after the fact and, all bark and no bite.
Right.
Where were you, Jim? This is the thing that drives me mad. This is the thing that was driving me mad about Minnesota Republicans a few years ago, when they come out and they just have all this great talking points and all these things they were going to do. And then when they get in the power, nothing materialized from it. It drove me crazy. And the Jim Jordan, unfortunately to me, sounds good, but unfortunately he doesn't pass the muster for me about getting things done.
Yeah, if you listen to CNN, MSNBC, The View, CBS, ABC, all the major networks, they were saying how clear he was prior to the election, or right before he dropped out of the election. And it's like, were they covering up? Are they lying?
Right.
So if you mistrust the major media, now you really mistrust them because they weren't telling the truth.
Right. Yeah. How can you ever think that they're actually telling you what's going on?
Right.
I don't know how people can look at the media, having seen this in front of their own eyes after the COVID-19 stuff, after the Russian collusion hoax,
yep.
Can look at the media and say, well, this time they're right. Sure, it's almost like an abusive relationship, right? This time they're going to straighten up. They promised, right?
Yeah.
They beat the hell out of you again. And you just come back for more.
But we're not going to mention Sean Diddy Combs.
Ooh. I'll tell you why they call him Tootsie Roll sometime, and I'm not going to mention it here.
No, definitely not.
Just not good.
Yeah.
I want to move on a little bit, and somebody talking about Joe Biden. So it came out he has cancer, and then all of a sudden a lot of the people were saying, well, you can't mention anything more about Joe Biden because, you got to get him sympathy.
He's a private
I
citizen.
found somebody on X that I don't think you'd say they really have a lot of sympathy for him. And I thought it was an interesting recap, though. Craven until the end. When Biden's wife died in a car accident, he dragged his grieving children in a press conference to display them in the media to garner sympathy. He repeatedly lied about his other son's cause of death. His 2020 campaign was launched under the banner of Fine People hoax. I won't pretend he was honorable or cancer washed away a lifetime of evil. I won't stop talking about the winter of death. Remember, he came out and said, if you don't get the COVID shot, you are facing a winter of death.
Right.
And they talk a little more, but this guy, I'm going to put these links in the comments. Not a fan. I can tell he's not a fan of Joe Biden.
Yeah, true. You look at all the things he's done over his lifetime, and you kind of make you wonder what morality side he has, actually.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, if you were to look up sleazy politician, after Gavin Newsom, you got Joe Biden. Joe Biden's like the elder. Gavin Newsom may be worse.
Right. Yeah, when you got Johnny Carson back in the 70s making remarks about he was a liar and he was a lowlife, that
right.
That was 50 years ago. So, and everyone knew he was a problem.
Well, he got knocked out of the 1984 presidential campaign because of plagiarism of a speech. I don't know how you come back from that as a politician, but he did.
Yeah.
Apparently won the presidency. I came across this next thing. McCaskill. It's a woman, Claire McCaskill. And I want to see if I want to play this whole thing. Let me play this clip and see what you think.
Is that a tariff war started by Trump can only be lost by America and Trump because China has a totally different domestic political dynamic. That the minute Trump announced this tariff war, nationalism in China surged and Xi's approval rating went up. Trump's approval rating has never been lower on the question of the economy since he descended the elevator in Trump Tower to announce a run for presidency. Claire.
So one thing to notice about this is how focused she is on polls and popularity. That's all they care about. They don't care if it's good for the country. And she says they have a whole different system, but look at his popularity. So she's saying they have a completely different system, but look at these things that we look at here is important. And that's what we should be looking at.
There, McCaskill.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, Katie Tur talked about last hour, this poll that came out that said, if you know about Trump's policies, the majority of Americans who know about them disapprove of them. For example, how he's treated the man who was sent to El Salvador after he had been at a court order that said he couldn't go to El Salvador.
The man, the illegal immigrant who had a deportation order in front of him. Now, language is very important.
Yeah.
My mistake sent him to the end of his life in a prison with no due process. When people know about
with no due process, although he had been to court and had been deported and a deportation order against him and had been in court for beating his wife too.
Yeah.
that, the majority of Americans disapprove of it. But there's a huge swath of Americans that don't know about that, because their algorithms are purposely not feeding them politics because they don't want to hear about it. But you know what they're all going to know about? They're all going to know about higher prices. They're all going to know that they're spending more at Walmart than they spent this time last year. They're all going to know that their 401ks are down.
I just want to mention something about that. Prices are double what they were 4 years ago.
Correct.
They've been increasing steadily. You know, my wife and I went to Taco John's just to get some freaking tacos. And, you know, it was like, we haven't been there in a while. Let's get that. And I got a couple meals, a couple burritos and some tacos. It was like $35. 4 years ago, that would have been $16, which was too high. And
Yeah.
then, 20 years ago is going to be like $5. But I mean, obviously there's going to be inflation over time, but it has been a massive increase the last 4 years. And these guys did nothing to talk about it. They would not talk about price increases at all. They actually laughed at us. Why do you care so much about the price of eggs? Well, the price of eggs is important because it's a food that we can all eat that was cheap. When I was starting out and I had no money, eggs and chicken was everything we ate because you could make it go a long way.
Correct.
And rice, chicken, and eggs.
Yeah.
And when that starts jumping up, then you're done because there's nothing to replace that.
They're all going to know that. And there's nothing Trump can do about that. And yes, the Wall Street Journal may say America is smart enough to know better. I will tell the Wall Street Journal this. America, I believe, clearly was not smart enough to keep this guy from the White House. He is causing confusion and uncertainty in a segment of our economy that desperately needs certainty. And by doing that, he is going to get higher prices, and that's when America will finally get smart. But they're not smart now because most of them are trying not to pay attention.
The arrogance of this woman.
Yeah.
I was reading her bio a little bit. She should just keep her mouth shut. I swear.
Yeah, we just spent 4 years with record inflation, prices going through the roof on everything. Gas prices in California, $7-8 a gallon.
Right.
And Trump's been in office 100 days, and somehow he's supposed to fix all that in 100 days.
Right. And the problem is, and people have to realize it is, fixing it is going to cause pain first.
Correct.
You can't fix this stuff and have it going. They were printing money for years.
Yeah.
That's all they were doing. There was nothing to back it up. So fixing that problem is not pain-free, and it won't be. It won't crush us, but it will be painful for a little bit, and then it'll be good.
Yeah. We have to start.
Long-term
Short-term pain for long-term gain.
Right. All right, let's move on to something that I find completely humorous is Starbucks.
Yeah.
They have implemented a new policy change. They put in a dress code and there's widespread revolt and people are striking. So let's listen to one.
I've been a barista at the Lincoln Highway Starbucks here for a little over 3 years. We're out on strike today because Starbucks is trying to implement a new dress code. No one ever asked for a new dress code. They updated a dress code recently and it made it looser where we can wear colors and patterns. And now they're deciding that we can only wear black.
I want to point something out before she continues. I don't know if people can see it in this video. This shirt is disgustingly dirty.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a shirt that has not been washed recently.
If most of us had to buy new clothes and we can't afford it. We barely make enough money to pay our bills. And also on top of that, they keep trying to make all these changes in union stores and it's illegal. They're not allowed to make these changes without bargaining with us and voting on this. So it's just incredibly alarming and upsetting that Starbucks is continuing to do illegal things to our union stores. And so we're out here. We're out here making sure that they know that we're still here and we're fighting for that contract.
So do you know why that would be illegal, Dave?
No, I mean, growing up, every place had uniforms. Go to Applebee's, they all wear black.
Right.
Go to McDonald's, they're all wearing, they already have structured uniforms. Everywhere has structured uniforms.
I worked at McDonald's.
Yeah, so you know better than I do.
Polyester pants, polyester shirt, and a hat. It was the most uncomfortable thing, but you had to wear it. You had to wear it right. You had to wear the hat during working hours, but they used to train us. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg for what they used to do for us opposed to what they do today.
Yeah.
But I don't understand the illegal. So is it if you have a union contract that you can't impose changes? I mean, is that a truth? Is that something that's
don't-
actually legal.
I don't know. We'd have to look at their contract to see if any changes were, if they get to vote on changes made. A dress code, I would think not.
Right.
I mean, I would, if they didn't like the dress code, there's this thing called quitting.
Yeah. Do you know how arduous this dress code is, though? This is the things they had to buy: a black shirt and
Yeah.
jeans. That's it. Any kind of pants that were like solid
Solid
and
black.
a black
yeah.
shirt. And that's too much, man. We can't do that.
I think the last time they were $4 at Kohl's.
Yeah.
So if that's too much for her, then
We have another one too.
And my coworkers are out on strike in protest of the company's recent illegal unilateral change to the dress code, which is extremely costly for partners, makes them vulnerable to discipline. The company is emboldened right now by this current political situation to break a law without consequence. There are real issues that affect Starbucks workers every day. Like even today, we were extremely understaffed and ill-equipped to take care of the volume of customers we were facing, which is one of the many things we're trying to actually resolve with the first contract. We're calling on Brian Nickel, our CEO of the company, to bargain in good faith with us and settle the first contract that brings real changes like improved staffing and better health and safety protections on the floor, instead of shallow nonsense like the dress code.
So, yeah, sure, it's great. Go for it. Close all the Starbucks. I don't care. I wouldn't mind.
the thing I noticed was they're both wearing masks, which are not required. So that they're paying however for just to wear a mask.
That's true.
They don't have to. So they're voluntarily wearing a mask. Both of those young ladies are spending money that they're not having to. So
They don't. If you don't like it, quit. If you're understaffed, then yeah, it's a problem. You should walk out.
yeah, go to Caribou Coffee.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll hire you. Dunkin' Donuts sells coffee out the door. There's plenty of other places that will be glad to hire you. Most places have uniforms, so
And dress standards, yeah. So you're going to have to be an adult and work at a place because they're not there for you. It's a joint thing. You're there to help them. They're there to help you, but they're not there just to provide you with income and to make it as cushy as possible. I'm going to shift to a little bit of a different direction. Somebody wrote this, and I thought it was interesting. The Supreme Court under John Roberts made January 6ers sit in prison for 3 years before deciding whether a never-before-used statute applied to misdemeanor trespass, converting a low-level offense to a life-destroying felony. They also dropped everything for an illegal immigrant criminal gang members. I think that's a great point. These people that were at the state cap or the Capitol at January 6th, walking around, especially the ones that weren't doing anything wrong, the ones that didn't cause destruction, the ones that weren't attacking people, they were put in prison for years. They were until Trump was elected. I mean, remember, after he was elected and before he was inaugurated, they were still touting how they were arresting these people.
right.
But as soon as an illegal gang member from a different country comes up, boy, they drop everything. It's time to talk about it.
Yeah, due process and speedy trials,
Right.
and you can't use that law we had on the books since 1858.
Right.
It just
That's unconstitutional.
So we're back to they could be in Minnesota because Minnesota doesn't represent Minnesota citizens, our representatives. They're more concerned right now than illegal foreign agents other than American tax-paying citizens.
Right.
I don't know
and
why.
Ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Right.
The real question is why we vote them into. Why would you ever vote someone like that into politics?
Right.
To represent you?
Right. Right. I'm not voting for them, but I'm wondering why people do.
Correct.
And do they understand the consequence of their actions? Not just for this, but what happens to us, the people that are living in this country and just seem to be under attack. Like we are just here to serve other people. And that's our whole purpose in life.
And you could hear from that
I want to go into
Catskill lady how they despise anyone who doesn't vote for them. So
yeah. I'm going to go on just to talk a little bit about how the news manipulates stories. Here's a thing from CBS News. South Florida woman faces $1.8 million ICE fine. A South Florida woman who has lived in the United States for 2 decades is now facing a staggering $1.82 million fine from ICE for failing to leave the country after receiving a removal order in 2005, 20 years ago.
yeah,
So she's not a South Florida woman. She's an illegal immigrant from Honduras. And the way they manipulate it, though, is they will call her a South Florida woman. How is she South Florida at all? She just lived there.
right.
She's not from there, and she's not legally there. And then, of course, they're going to pull out the sob stories and have the women crying in their news stories because this is what they want. They want to garner the sympathy. They want the emotion. That's all they're after, is so that they can get you to be agitated so that you will do what they want you to do. Understand that they very carefully curate these stories to put them in front of you so that you will feel the sympathy, so you will get agitated. And that's the whole reason that they do half the stuff, is to keep you always irritated.
Yeah, and that's how they get you into their point of view. Is they, instead of all of these things, they got one outlying goofball standard that they're going to try to get you into the whole system with.
Yeah, exactly. So I should have put this up earlier with when we were talking about the ICE stuff, but Nancy Pelosi talking about that Congresswoman LaMonica McLeaver. The baseless charges against this congresswoman are nothing more than a political stunt and a brazen attack on the constitutional Article 1 powers of Congress. She was conducting a legitimate oversight of the ICE facility as permitted by law. I join my Democratic colleagues in the House in extending my full support to her. Yeah, look what she did to the people that were walking around the people's house.
Right.
You know why it's different? She says it clearly. This was a politician. You can't touch them.
Yeah, and that's why Trump is turning the law on her. So she's facing 8 years in prison for attacking an ICE person, a person from the ICE department.
Yep.
So, they would have gladly allowed her in if she would have made an appointment, according to the ICE officials, Tom Holman. But she just showed up and started, violently hitting people, and
Right.
they didn't stand for it because she didn't get her way, so she got violent.
Right.
And now she's going to pay the price.
They did, I believe, drop those charges against that New Jersey mayor, though. So
Yes. Yeah, they did, because he was being polite about it. They said he came in and he didn't have an appointment. They said, you're trespassing. You need to make an appointment because for everybody's safety, and, right now you're trespassing. So, what do you want to do? So then during the fight, that's when they arrested him to, try to calm everybody down. But he didn't actually hit anybody. He was calm the whole time. And so they, I can see that he was a mayor or wherever he was doing, but he was being a civilized human being.
Yeah. And normally I think that's the way to do it. But after what they did to the January 6th protesters, I have a hard time feeling sympathy for these guys after what they did to those people.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the ones that were beating people over the head. I'm talking about the ones that were just there.
Yeah.
I
I threw the Pelosi Act in there just because I
was wondering about that. You gonna talk about
yeah.
it?
Yeah, the Pelosi Act was shot down a couple of years ago when Biden was in office, and it's basically it changes the rules for buying securities and stocks, and they named it after her because they know she was one of the biggest con artists, and even just recently, she sold all of her credit card stocks right before credit cards got sued.
Yeah.
And only she was going to know that because that's insider information. But then I found another article. Senator Josh Hawley has reintroduced this thing April 28th of this year. So he reintroduced it. So this is something that's a possibility that could go through. So how our elected officials can trade stocks, buy stocks is would drastically change. So they can't just completely get rich. Like Amy Klobuchar got rich off of insider trading. Pelosi got rich off of insider Allegedly, yeah.
Well, the thing is that, I mean, obviously you're going to have stock, or you're probably going to have stock if you're a legislator, but you should have that you shouldn't have access to it. You shouldn't have access to changing it. Like it should be, I can't remember what it's called, but it's some sort of system where you give it up and somebody else manages it for you. And you don't have any say in it. You can't take things out. You can't put it in because this is insider trading. Now, at the turn of the century, the reason they put these laws in place, the people that helped put these laws in place were the ones who got massively rich because of them. They knew all the tricks they did. Yeah. And after they got rich, it didn't matter to them anymore. So they put the laws in place. I believe Congress is exempt from those laws. I do not believe they have to adhere by insider trading laws.
Correct. And that's what the Pelosi Act, S58, is trying to stop.
Right.
So basically, they would be forced to put it into a mutual fund that they don't control.
Right.
So if the S&P 500 goes up, they make money. If it goes down, they lose money like everybody else.
Wouldn't that be
no
great
control over it?
To have them tied directly to the overall S&P as opposed to individual stocks, which they can control? Because obviously what they can do is say, hey, this bill isn't going to go through and I know it. So this company is going to suffer and this one's going to make a lot of money. So let's invest.
And that's why they don't like, supposedly they don't like Doge, is because, or Trump, because Trump will make a decision and then act on it before they can insider trading stuff.
Right. Yeah, it is a problem for them.
Yeah.
Let's see. Doge. You said, I'll put this link on here, but there's a doge.gov/savings site.
Yeah.
And its estimated savings is 170 billion so far. And that per taxpayer is $1,055. Who can't like that?
Well, I should have sent you this article that there's a news reporter, financial reporter, interviewing Elon Musk, and she was going, "Well, you promised us $2 trillion you were going to save us," and it was hilarious because Elon just said, "Yeah, I'm going to eventually." It's not going to happen overnight. I'm not going to save you. We're back to the Trump thing. We're not going to fix things overnight. It's going to take some time to get to that point.
Right.
And he is noticeably angry, and he really chewed on this lady. It was kind of funny. I should have spent more time getting it to you, because it was like, yeah, we're going to, but not instantaneously. It's not an instantaneous savings program.
It's funny because they were complaining about, well, the egg prices aren't coming down 3 weeks after Trump was inaugurated.
Yeah.
3 weeks. And just like that moron woman that was talking earlier, well, people are going to notice when the price go. We've been noticing for many, many years now. Let's cram through a couple more of these things. International news. Remember we talked last week about the 3,000 euros you have to go tell the government before you can take out 3,000 euros of your money from the bank.
Mhm.
And then if it's more than that, you have to give them even more notice.
Yeah.
The thing I failed to mention about that is, and just to recap, that's pretty much a recap. Spain is saying, you must tell us that. And if you don't tell us 24 hours before you're going to take out this money, we can fine you up to 10% of the money that you're taking out of your money that you put into a bank. The thing is that there's been a big push to go to digital currency. Now think about it. This is when you're talking about cash. So when you get that cash out, I don't know how they track what you said you're going to do with what you actually do with it, but that's cash. Digital currency, they can track every single penny of it.
Correct.
And we saw what happened in Canada during the truck protests. They just shut off people's access to their bank accounts. If it's digital currency, they can do it even easier. They could even do something where I heard about this and it was just insidious. Your currency, your money that you get degrades over time. So you get $100 in your account because you worked, but you have to spend it within 30 days or it goes down, it starts going down until it's just gone. The government just takes that cash from you.
Nice.
So be careful about going to digital currency. If you're watching this, please be aware that it is going to be a control issue that they are going to get control of. And once you lose that currency, that hard cash, it's gone. It's never coming back.
Yeah, and there was I believe Poland passed a law, because I was looking into this, and Poland passed a law requiring actual cash. So you can still use your credit card, but they put into law that they will never get rid of cash because they said that was a invasion of your freedom.
Good. Well, that's good. I hope other people wake up to that and understand it.
There was a country I did see that did switch about 10 years ago. I believe it was either Sweden or Norway went 100% digital, or Finland maybe. And the problem it's causing is the government has 100% control over you at all times.
Right. You can't put a $10 bill in for your grandson's birthday. You can't pay somebody with cash because they did your yard work. It's completely controlled, which is exactly what the governments that want to control you want, because then they get more money. And that seems to be the end goal for a lot of these places.
Yeah. Control and power.
Right. I want to switch over to South Africa a little bit. So we'll talk about Trump's meeting with South African president in a second, but I just want to preface this a little bit. And this was a tweet that says the White House has directed federal agencies to stop working with the G20 conference slated to be held later in South Africa amid President Trump's outcry over the treatment of white South African minority and farmers. So the response was the South African government just told the world that white Afrikaners, refugees, aren't fleeing persecution, that they're fleeing racial justice. Their president then called them cowards for escaping. That's the president.
Yeah.
So what is happening there? If what they're talking about is racial justice, then they're okay with killing these guys. That just plays their hand completely. That's exactly what they're doing. This isn't about running a country effectively. This is about getting racial justice. And that tells me that these people are under persecution. And just to kind of, before I go into the Trump meeting again, I'll just play this for you just so you have a little context here. It's buffering now.
Over that song, that anti-apartheid chant, right? And for people who don't have a historical context, it does potentially appear more literal. Talk to us about the debate that has happened inside of South Africa with the recognition of how it appears to people when they hear those words.
It is an inflammatory song, without a doubt. And many in South Africa, even Black South Africans, don't think it should be sung in a post-apartheid world, 30 years plus after apartheid. But there are many who grew up under those years of white minority rule who understand the historical context of this song, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer, that Julius Malema has made popular again. It sort of fell into disuse. It's not been that commonly sung after the end of apartheid in 1994, but it's brought it back again to reanimate the issue of the majority of land in South Africa still being owned by white farmers.
So you have to understand the context of the song that says, kill them.
Right.
Kill the Boers, kill the farmers. So as long as you understand the historical context, though, it's okay to sing that, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm just glad the guys that came back from World War II didn't have that same attitude, because it could have been messy around here.
Yeah, I mean, in today's society, if it was good that Trump brought it up, though. I mean,
oh yeah, we didn't talk about what he did. So he had the president of South Africa in his office, and he was doing one of those press conferences where it was just him, the president, sitting up in front, and then the press corps there. And one of them, I saw one of the women say to President Trump, she actually asked President Trump, what will have to happen for you to believe that there is no genocide happening against white farmers, and this isn't actually happening? And Trump started to answer, and the president of South Africa interrupted him. He said, "Let me answer this." And I could see Trump goes, he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you answer that for me." So he does, and he says what has to happen for him to believe there isn't a genocide happening is he has to listen to us. He has to listen to the people of South Africa, and we would never allow that to happen. And you have to listen to the people that are here with me, because they would not be with me if that was happening. And he got done, and then Trump was like, "Okay, but could you dim the lights?" And then he went on to play 4 minutes of video of them singing this "Kill the Boer," of, I believe, this president saying something about it, somebody else saying it. You have to get used to killing people in a revolution. And we're in a revolution because apparently they're in a revolution. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And at the end, Trump was like, he was showing a video, and he said, "You see all those white things on the side of the road, both sides of the road? Those are crosses that represent one person who has been killed, either a farmer or his family, since this started happening." And the president of South Africa, he looked befuddled when this was all happening. He was like, what just happened here? Because Trump brought the receipts.
Yeah.
And for news organizations that produced things like the fact checking while he was president the first term, you'd think they'd eat that up.
Right.
You've got a guy literally lying to the people in the press saying this is not happening, and Trump coming up and saying, "Well, it is, and here's proof of it."
Correct.
So they get all done with that, and then the room isn't even quiet yet, right? You just got done doing this, and then the next reporter calls on the next reporter. So I'm waiting for this great follow-up question. Like, what president of South Africa, what do you have to say to that? What is the response? No, Mr. President, the Pentagon today went on, and then it just went on to something about the Pentagon. Like, it just right over their heads. Like, It doesn't affect them at all. He's talking about the genocide of all these farmers, and he's got the president of South Africa right there. This is a perfect tee up. They don't even smell that. They just don't care. It's what was I told to read here? What was the question I had to ask?
Right.
Are they these just functionally morons, or they just don't care, or they just want to cover it up?
Well, they're like the protesters on the side of the road hating Trump and Elon. They don't know why. They're told to do something, and they do it.
Right.
But
And you know what? I talked to Dawn about this today, and she had a great point. She was like, "Well, why? Wouldn't it be great if he would have said to the reporter, said, okay, so you're just hearing this. What's it going to take for you to think that there's a genocide happening? And what do you think about what just happened here? What are your thoughts? Turn it around on them, because they just ask these inflammatory questions as if they have some point, but they don't have a point. They just have a question to ask."
Right.
No, I would love to have seen that. That would have been a great response. But not taking away from anything he did. Nobody Nobody would do this. He called them out right there on the mat, right in front of him, because that's what you have to do to these liars. And it's not something small. He's not lying about embezzling money. He's lying about killing people because of their race.
Correct. And so they've come to the United States begging for us to get the tariffs off, and for begging to not be disincluded in the American economy to help them out.
Right.
So it's going to change because Trump was not going to allow it. Now we know that Trump knows about it, and he's going to put a stop. Basically he's overriding whatever the president of South Africa thinks.
Right.
And if it doesn't get done, Trump will take care of it.
Yes. So how does the media respond to this? So Trump this guy says he lies to the president. He lies to the court. President calls him out with evidence saying it's not true. And I'm seeing what it is.
Yeah.
The response from the media in the United States is to say he ambushed it. And of course they have the narrative that says he ambushed it. Trump ambushes South African president with false claims of white genocide. With live TV with videos of debunked white persecution. No, it's really happening. They are getting killed, whether you like it or not. So this is the part of the problem, right? Why wouldn't you expect the American government, or not American government, but the American press? Why I expect this. Why would you not expect them to just attack Donald Trump on this and not talk about this guy lying in front of him?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why are Minnesota politicians so concerned about illegal aliens?
Right.
The Democrats recently have been just favoring the wrong people.
Right.
For who knows what reason.
Well, that's just it. Yeah. Follow the money, I guess.
Right. And that's why they don't like Trump, because he's kind of shutting off their wallets, basically, their free backdoor money. So
I tell you what, I've been watching the series Rome, and I've seen it before. And I've been reading a lot about Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire and how it kind of fell apart. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of echoes going on with this. Caesar he was pompous and a dictator, and he was self-serving, but he also helped the people of Rome. They loved him. And it seemed like the things he was doing was made to not only just better himself, but to better the people of Rome. And they killed him for it. And his downfall was he was too nice. And it kind of plays out with the election came up. Like look at Pence. He was nice to Pence, and Pence stabbed him in the back, figuratively.
Right.
So I'm seeing a lot of parallels to that here. I hope it doesn't end the same way. But Caesar, I believe, was a very good ruler. He was a dictator. It was the end of the republic. But you know what? That republic was dysfunctional because the senators enriched themselves, and they didn't care about the people that lived there. All they cared about was their own riches.
Right.
And in fact, another parallel is as Caesar comes into the city, one of his advisors, who's also a slave, says to him, "We're going to run out of cash pretty soon, so you better kill some rich people." That just seems like a parallel here too. Like that's always the answer. If you've made something of yourself, it's time to take what you have.
The answer is tax the rich.
Exactly.
The question is, who do we steal from?
Right. And just to show again, if I haven't made this point clear, the press collusion of this. Let's just watch this.
The dramatic scene in the Oval Office today, the tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
Up next, another Oval Office meltdown, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
President Trump is being accused of conducting something of a diplomatic ambush of South Africa's president in the Oval Office.
To be with you, I'm Katie Tur. President Trump orchestrated another Oval Office ambush today.
Today, Donald Trump meeting with the president of South Africa. and attempting to ambush and humiliate that leader.
Zelensky territory, where essentially he was a bit ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Felt like an ambush in there, kind of like the President Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office.
This was an ambush. It was orchestrated.
Cyril Ramaphosa brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush.
What started as, to some degree, an ambush.
Well, Katie, I mean, it wasn't ambush.
Ambushed.
An ambush.
Ambushing.
Ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Ooh, so well, at least we got the word of the day calendar straight.
If it's a drinking game, you're dead.
Jesus.
I want to keep on the international scene, and I just want to talk about something that happened in Finland, which, if I get elected, apparently I have to make laws that are only good for Finnish people. So I better get used to it, because that's what we do when we get elected. We just look out for whatever we are.
Right.
Finland to criminalize Holocaust denial. Government is proposing to add a provision to the criminal code to outlaw Holocaust denial and other serious international crimes. So that's a serious international crime. Suggesting the Holocaust did not happen will become a punishable offense, with the penalty ranging from a fine to 2 years imprisonment. So, Finnish government proposal is based on the EU's framework decision on combating racism and xenophobia. If somebody denies the Holocaust happened, we've got some evidence that says it did, and you present it to them, and if they still don't believe it, it's okay. It's okay if people think the earth is flat. It's okay to think the moon is made out of cheese. You don't have to be in control of everybody's thoughts. You can let them be themselves. Now, if they say we should kill that person or kill these people, you've got a problem. But until then, just let them have their own opinions.
So basically, they're trying to ban every single United States college person, because all the professors are saying to deny the Holocaust, and Queers for Palestine is a good idea, and to hate Israel.
What happens when somebody who's a guy who wants to believe he's a woman goes to Finland? Is that, I'm a woman, going to jail.
Yeah, and they said any serious things. So they write the law to be vague enough so they can. Well, that's a serious issue that we can throw you in jail for. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the whole point, is throwing you in jail so you will stop talking about things, so that then it never happened.
Yeah.
The winner always creates the history, but this is crazy. All right. I'm going to just skip down to health. Let's end on a fun time. Make America healthy again. MAHA. So, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is in charge of that. And I got one interesting thing from him. RFK Jr. lost it in the congressional Democrats. So I think we have audio.
District want to work with you on those goals. What can we do to promote this with young children, healthy lunches, all sorts of areas where local communities can partner with you in this effort?
We are about to reissue dietary guidelines. We're going to do it very quickly. We have until January, but we're going to do it. I think we'll have it done even before August. And we took the Biden guidelines, which were 453 pages long, and were clearly written by industry, that are incomprehensible, driven by the same industry capture and those kind of carnal impulses that put Fruit Loops at the top of the food pyramid.
Fruit Loops are good.
Oh, yeah.
And we are changing that. So we're going to have 4-page dietary guidelines that tell people essentially eat whole food, eat the food that's good for you. That's going to drive changes in the school lunch program. And we're going to need your help to make sure we can get good school lunches to Head Start. I've been touring these Head Start facilities.
I just noticed this. These two guys on each side look really, really scared.
Package. And it is just loaded with sugar and with chemicals. We're poisoning this generation, 800,000 kids, the poorest kids in our country, and we're starting them out with this count against them, with diabetes, pre-diabetes. 38% of our youth now are diabetic or pre-diabetic. Now,
38% of kids are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And that's not talking about type 1, which you have no control over.
Right.
That's talking type 2, which is stuff you do have control over. And if it's happening that young, it's because of obesity.
I was 0 when I was a kid.
Yeah, just to point out that, I don't know how old he is, but might not have had insulin back then. So
things that we did, old standard medicine in this country from these institutions. Look at our children. They're the sickest children in the world. Laura, you say that excuse me, Congressman DeLauro, you say that you've worked for 20 years on getting food dye out. Give me credit. I got it out in 100 days. All right, so let's work together and do something that we all believe in, which is have healthy kids in our country, for God's sake.
Ms.
All
Vane.
believe that together. It's not, there's no such thing as Republican children and Democratic children. There's just kids, and we should all be concerned with them.
You're absolutely right. I thought it was a great point too. You've been working 20 years.
Yeah.
If that's their job isn't to get it done. It's to work on it. Right?
Right. Yeah. The one thing that he doesn't discuss, and I don't know how you would ever fix it, but the processed foods are a lot cheaper than the good whole foods.
Yep.
So how do you balance cheap school lunches that the kids like to eat with, the high priced good foods that are actually good to eat?
I guess the question is, why are they cheaper? Well, why are they cheaper? What is it that causes that?
Yeah. Why should something that's processed cost less than something that's not processed? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So that's what's got to get fixed first. If you can get the cheap stuff cheap, the good food cheap, the processed stuff more expensive, then people will eat healthier and everyone will be better off. I can believe the stats on the pre-diabetes because we're eating. It's so much easier to eat the cheap processed foods.
Right. Yeah, and I go back to things like cottage cheese. Daisy cottage cheese has like 3 ingredients.
Right.
The other ones have multiple ingredients. The less ingredients, I think, the better.
Correct. And you should be able to pronounce all of the ingredients.
I can't pronounce simple words. How am I going to do the complex ones? One more thing on health before we talk about our keeping ourselves healthy and honest. Found out the top FDA official never received the COVID-19 vaccination. So another one of those things that's mandated for people, and they go, well, we never mandated it. We just, made you lose your job if you didn't get it. We never actually mandated you to get it. Another great thing, top FDA official. No, never got it. It's fine.
Yeah, I read another story that I couldn't prove. It came from a bad source, and I couldn't prove it at a good source. But they were saying that all of our top officials weren't getting the shots; they were getting saline shots. They weren't getting the COVID shots.
Well, there's that theory that says that yes, they didn't get it. Well, there was even some where they showed these people not getting shot because they didn't have a needle in it, or they missed it. They just didn't do it. I mean.
Yeah.
There's also things that, they have all these politicians gathered together and they have to do a public service announcement or something. They're not wearing masks. And right before they go live, they're all throwing their masks on and then they're all, we're in this together. It was a complete psyop. Complete.
Yeah.
And even Fauci admitted that masks didn't work before, and then all of a sudden they did. And he said the 6 feet distancing was just completely made up. So I don't know if people still believe this stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of tiring.
All right. We're going to end on the health and fitness. I ran a couple times. I went on a treadmill because it's been 40 degrees here in Duluth. Today it finally got nice into the 60s today. And I think I worked out with weights twice. So I did that. So I think I ran twice or 3 times and worked out with weights twice. How about you?
I was a little bit under the weather this week, so I walked outside a couple times last weekend because it was a little bit warmer, and then 2 lifting. So I definitely could have done more. Wasn't feeling that well, but I think we're going to be back at it. Last week was bad. This week should be back to normal. So
yeah.
And then the weather is supposed to be good this weekend, so hopefully I'll get out and get some cardio done. So
Get some sun too. My God.
yeah.
I was telling Dawn that I went on the treadmill and she's like, "How's your run?" I said, "It wasn't good, but at least I did it," because I did not want to be there. I didn't want to run. The whole run was a torture session of forcing myself to go, but that's what happens when you've broken for a couple of days. You got to get back into it. If you can do it consistently every other day or every third day gets a little tough, but every other day is the way you want to run, or the way I have to run.
Yeah, and then sometimes you will just go through the motions of doing an activity, but even just half-heartedly going through the motion helps.
Yeah, we've gone through a couple weightlifting sessions that were pathetic.
Yes,
but
definitely.
We still did it.
We're still there. We were still moving some weight around. So,
all right, I think that's probably the end for tonight. Unless you got anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think I got everything covered so far. So.
All right. If you listened and you liked it, please subscribe, hit the bell, whatever it is that they do. I'm resisting doing the cover photos that everybody else does to get people to watch. It's always like they got something in the background and the person's like, So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to treat you all like adults, and then we're going to see how this podcast goes. But if you do like it, please send me a note and tell me what you're liking. Otherwise, if that's it, I'm Sean.
I'm Dave.
And this has been the Duluth Conservative. Thanks for joining, and we will see you next week.